I never imagined that a weekly hair appointment can turn into the most terrifying experience of my lifetime. Every week I go to the same hair salon in Nairobi, Kenya, but on the 12th of January 2025, as I was leaving the salon, a black van pulled up in front of my Uber. Armed masked man jumped out, dragged me out of the vehicle, and tried to put me into the van. I resisted, and it was not easy to subdue me, because as you can see, I'm not a petite woman. And I knew I had to fight and cause a scene. And the single strongest emotion that I had was anger. I kept hearing in my head the voice of my friend Mdude Nyagali, "Usibebwe kama gunia mchele," which means do not be carried off like a sack of rice. And I really fought. Luckily, I was not alone. Even under threat, a public bus driver was driving by, saw the commotion, and then he saw in the rearview mirror that they managed to put me into the van. He decided to try and help by blocking the van's path. Also, the Uber driver who witnessed the incident immediately reported to the police. This confused the abductors and brought me time. And in addition to that, thanks to the quick reaction of my husband, David, Law Society of Kenya, and Amnesty International, they managed to put a name and my face to the incident, and that worked. It immediately sparked a public outcry, and with all the pressure that it worked, the abductors stopped the van after 3 hellish hours and let me go. Now, while in the van, these abductors claim that they are from the Kenyan police. But I have no doubt in my mind that they were working on behalf of the government of Tanzania, the same government that I had fled to seek safety in Kenya. And also just a week earlier, a so-called public media figure in Tanzania called for my and my friend, journalist Eric Kabendera's return from exile and to be dealt with. Now you may ask, why would the government of Tanzania want to disappear me? Because I refuse to be silent. I have faced bullies all my life. During my childhood in Dar es Salaam, I stood out. Tall, light-skinned, big and woolly hair, and with a European mother, I was an easy target for bullies. My mother said, if you do not stand up, they will never stop. And I did, and I never stopped. From skinheads in Budapest to racists in Washington, I stood my ground. But nothing compares to bullies who wield state power in order to silence millions. And I speak not just for myself. I speak for the countless Tanzanians who refuse to be bullied into silence. And for the past few years, I've been speaking in international forums, social media, telling anyone who would listen about a chilling pattern of enforced disappearances and abductions, targeting the critiques of President Samia Suluhu Hassan in Tanzania. And between March 2021 to August 2024, Mdude Nyagali and I compiled 80 cases of politically motivated abductions that happened. More than half of these abductions, the victims were never seen again. So let me quickly give you 4 cases. There was Dedith Soka, a youth leader who was well known to organize peaceful protests, and he disappeared a few days after he wrote that he had been threatened by the police. Ali Kibao, a senior Chadema security advisor. He was taken off the bus at night by armed men. Next day, his body was found mutilated. His face had acid thrown on it and his eyes gouged out. Shadrach Chaula, an artist who was jailed for a viral TikTok video in which he burned the picture of Samia Suluhu Hassan. A month after his release, men showed up saying their government officials shoved him in a white SUV, never seen again. Orias Olenginho, an elder 85-year-old Maasai who got wounded during altercations in the violent evictions in northern Tanzania. His family saw he was taken away by security forces, never seen again. And these cases are not isolated. In fact, investigations have stalled, and for example, last week, 2 activists, one from Kenya and Uganda, were detained by the police in Tanzania, disappeared for a couple of days, and then turned up, tortured near the border. And let us understand this. The goal is simple: instill fear, silence dissent, and suppress the opposition ahead of the October elections. In order for you to understand, let me give you a little landscape of the political scene in Tanzania. We have been ruled by the same political party since independence. And even though in 1992 we transitioned into so-called multi-party democracy, but our laws remain stuck in the past. The president, for example, still appoints administrators, judges, even electoral commissioners. And you have dissenters arrested, newspapers shut down, NGOs deregister, and peaceful protest is met with violence. John Pombe Magufuli turned our flawed democracy into a dictatorship. And after his death, many hoped that his successor, Samia Suluhu, will bring some form of reform and chart a new course. And maybe for a moment she did. In fact, there was a lot of hype around the fact that she was the first female president of Tanzania, as if that was a qualification on its own. Well, there was a lot of conjecture about her being a reformist. For example, just for her to acknowledge that there was COVID in Tanzania and roll out a vaccine program, she was dubbed as a champion of democracy. I didn't buy into the hype. In fact, I saw the red flags. I kept telling everyone, without fundamental, important change through action, the talk about reform is just that, talk. Well, unfortunately, my warning went unheeded. In fact, I was dubbed a hater, even though I persistently pointed out to atrocities committed by security forces. The moment's gone, but I want to say something very important. She may have gone further than Magufuli, because not only has she continued the repression, but she has utilized and normalized enforced disappearance as a political tool. In fact, a very good example is she's the only president in the history of Tanzania to have charged her 2 main opponents with major offenses. Freeman Mbowe in 2021 was charged with terrorism, eventually, of course, freed. And this year, Tundu Lissu, who is the head of the main opposition party, Chadema, is sitting in jail charged with treason just because he demanded electoral reforms. Tanzania looks serene on the surface. We have beautiful national parks, majestic Kilimanjaro, the turquoise beaches of Zanzibar, beautiful Maasai warriors. And if you have visited Tanzania, you may have visited the famous Serengeti Park, or maybe even gone to the World Heritage Site in Ngorongoro Crater. And one of the things that really struck me was how this postcard image has been tainted by political repression. Samia Suluhu has managed to go and find an angle to the global concern around conservation and twist it around in order to greenwash land grab, human rights abuses, and even trophy hunting. It sounds strange, but let me tell you. There is an area called Loliondo, Ngorongoro. Since the early 1990s, this area was ancestral land for the Maasai. And it was unique in its agreement between the government and the Maasai, whereby the Maasai were allowed to live in the area except inside the crater. And it is very common for you to see Maasai huts with wildlife roaming, cows and sheep grazing together with wildebeest and zebras. The lifestyle of the Maasai is very eco-friendly. In fact, they are said to have one of the smallest carbon footprint in the world. What is of a growing concern are, of course, the hundreds of SUVs that drive down into the crater, the mushrooming hotels and resorts that have swimming pool, they have air conditions, modern fittings, and this is a growing climate change concern. However, from day one, the government of Samia Suluhu Hassan has accused the Maasai of destroying the environment. In June 2022, what happened was security forces and some wildlife rangers descended onto villages in Loliondo. They violently evicted the people and declared the villages and the grazing grounds as a reserve. And then on top of that, what followed was active propaganda, denial of basic social services, including health and education. This led to the death of women from childbirth. It led to the death of children from measles. And it is said to have affected about 70,000 Maasai people. But August 2024, look at that. 40,000 Maasai decided to organize the biggest sit-in protest and occupied the plains and the highway. And they refused to leave until the government listens to them. Of course, the government scrambled and tried to reconcile. They even set up an inquiry commission, but the rights of the Maasai to their ancestral land is not yet guaranteed. Well, Tanzania is a darling of donors, right? Every year we receive millions, and it is for our water, education, health, and we keep telling donors, do not give money without putting a condition to human rights and democracy. And they say, no, we're not enabling repressive regimes. We do it for the people, but they cannot be bothered to put conditions on human rights and democracy. For example, they tell us because they're scared of the influence of China in Africa. But we keep telling them, the truth is this government is not accountable to the people. When you give money, it benefits them only. So, taxpayers of donor countries, make sure that you tell your government to hold Tanzania accountable when giving aid in order to ensure that there's standards for democracy and human rights. And for everyone who's traveling to Tanzania, karibu sana. Enjoy the scene and the beauty of it, but do not be the one who enables the repression of indigenous communities. Always do your research, find out how you can help directly. But our demands are clear. We want a new democratic constitution. We want to dismantle the machinery of fear. We want a new social contract, one that will bury the legacy of a one-party state and restore the dignity of the people of Tanzania. Tanzania belongs to its people and not to those who terrorize them. And this is not just about Tanzania. Authoritarianism is on the rise all around the world. And if we do not unite, they win. So we ask, speak out, stand with us. Help us. Help us reclaim Tanzania. We are not victims. No, we're not. We are a movement, and we shall not be bullied.